So I thought I would share with you our process for creating our 3D models after we create our 2D drawings. And we're going to be using SketchUp for this process. So first things first, we'll come in with our rectangle and we're going to enter in 5.5 comma, we're going to do a 36-inch bench. So now we have a 36-inch plank. We're going to use our push tool. So we hit the P key on our keyboard, and as we hover over a face, it will turn color and allow us to define a thickness. So with your numeric keypad, we'll enter 1.5, and that creates a thickness. Now, one thing I wish it would do is when we create that thickness, I wish it would automatically create a component or give us the option to set that, but it doesn't. So what we have to do is we have to triple click on this. That will select all of the faces, and right click and choose make a component. And I just use the default name. You don't have to, but that's just how I kind of do it. So for the middle of our bench, we're going to make a 2x4. So we're going to go back to our rectangle tool, and we're going to type in 3.5 comma 36. And so when we do it, you see how it's kind of changed the orientation. So if we enter in 36 first, comma 3.5, it will create it the opposite way. Again, push tool, 1.5 thick, triple click, right click and choose make component. So now we're going to copy this one. So we're going to just select our move tool from this point here, and then to copy we hit control. And then it will make a duplicate, as you can see there. Okay. So now we have our bench boards made. So now what we need to do is actually create the legs of our bench. So I know that our legs of our bench are 12 and 7/8. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's do 3.5 and then comma 1.5. So there's our 2x4, and we need it to be 12 and 7/8, 12.875 with our push tool. Triple click and right click and make component and hit create. Okay. So now what we're going to do is there's a cleat that goes on the top and the bottom of our leg, but let's refer to our 2D drawing here so we can see what we're talking about here. So we created this piece. Now we're going to create this piece. So you can see that the plans say that that piece is 12.5 inches wide. And you can see there's a 45-degree miter there. And the same is true at the bottom. So I'm going to come in here and kind of recreate that. So rectangle tool, we're going to do 12.5, comma 3.5, right? And then push it 1.5. So P key, we are going to make this a component. And now we need to do a 45-degree miter. Now there's a variety of ways to do this, but if we know, for example, let's go over here and just show you. So this is a 45-degree miter. So if I draw a guideline over this way, and I draw a guideline over this way, let's go right to the tip. How wide is that? Well, we could see that it's 1.5 inches because we did a 45-degree miter. So it's whatever the thickness of the material is. So if we understand that basic principle, let's come back over to our 3D model and see how that relates. So to create a 45-degree bevel, all we have to do is select this face. So if we select that, see how I have just that face selected, and then I hit my move key, and we can move this in 1.5 inches, and that gives us our 45-degree bevel. And we would just do the same thing over here. So it's really easy to add our angles to our boards. You can see now we have that 45-degree bevel. Okay, So now what I need to do is I need to put this right there at my base. So I'm going to pick it up from the middle point here. See, it says midpoint in component, and we'll put it, sometimes it's a little bit tricky, and that's just kind of a software thing. I want it to snap to this board that I already have. So sometimes I will try and snap it like that. And see, now that it's snapped there, for whatever reason, it's easier to pick up from the midpoint. But it does not want to do that, no matter what I do. So let's try the bottom here. It did just snap to that. So there we go. And now we'll just pick it up and move it. Okay, so now we've moved it to that point. So now I'm going to grab a tape measure. You see it's at 2. So to center it, we just need to move it 1. Okay, so now we've taken care of that. So let's go ahead and make a copy of this. Remember, we have to hit the Control key to make a copy. And then we are going to flip it along the blue axis. And you can see there, we did flip it successfully. Then we can move it again from the midpoint to the midpoint, and then we can move it out 1 inch. Okay, so now we have that taken care of, but actually this is going in the wrong orientation, and I just now noticed that. So, easy enough fix. We're going to go Q to rotate, and all we're going to do is use our arrow keys to change the face, and we need to rotate it this way. And then we can move from midpoint to midpoint. Okay? So that takes care of that. So our next thing is to make a duplicate of this. I think that's the easiest thing. And we're going to rotate this 45. And then we're going to move this right in line to that. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to trim this down. But before we do that, we need to make sure it's unique. So we're going to right click and choose unique, because if we modified this and it was a copy of that, it would modify both pieces. So now we're just going to draw a line across here and a line across here, and that will kind of chop this up so we can get rid of this with our push tool, and we can get rid of this face with our push tool. And so now we're left with that. Okay, so again, we'll make a copy. So now, but we have to flip this, right? So if we flip it along its blue axis, basically doesn't do anything. But if we flip it along the green axis, now you can kind of see what it's done. It has flipped around, but we have to rotate it. But that's not a big deal. So we'll just pick it up and put it where it's supposed to be. And then we'll rotate it. Make sure we're on the proper face and rotate it around into position. There you go. Okay. So now we basically need to do the same thing, but on the bottom. So how do you think we're going to flip it now? So if we flip it along the green direction, nothing happens. If we flip it along the blue direction, yes. See, so it kind of just depends on which way we got to go with it. But now you can kind of see we have almost the entire leg complete. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make the little pads at the bottom of our piece here. So what we're going to do is go ahead and we're going to make it 4 inches. Okay. So just type in 4. We're going to make it 5/8 of an inch thick. And just like before, we're going to go ahead and triple click, make it a component. And just like before, we're going to add a 45-degree bevel. So we'll select that one edge right there, and we'll hit move. And to add the 45-degree bevel, we're going to move it in 5/8 of an inch. And we're going to do the same thing on this side. Okay. So there you go. There's your little pad for our little foot. And now we're going to go ahead and make a copy of it and bring it over here. And so now we have it all taken care of as far as our leg goes. So now I would just go ahead and select it all, right click and group it. So now we can interact with it as one piece. So now I'm going to rotate this around like so. And now we could position it in place. So to position it in place, we are going to move it from the center to the center. And then we're going to move it in 2 inches. So now we could spin this around and we can grab a copy of it. So we'll hit the move tool, control key to make a duplicate, and then we'll move it in 2 inches. Ta-da! So there we go. So now we would just have one 2.5 inch board connecting these two. You know, something I just kind of thought of. These are not supposed to be 3.5. They're only supposed to be 2.5. My bad. So we could just push these in. So I am going to come in here and we'll edit this component. So we're going to push this in 2.5. Well, actually, we're going to push it in 1 to make it 2.5. Same thing here. We're going to push this in 1, and same thing here. Push it in 1. Now you'll notice that everything we're doing over here is happening over here because there is a copy. So that's kind of handy. When we need to modify one, we can modify all of it. And remember, we flip things around, and so we have to move these pieces back to where they're supposed to be because of how we flipped it all around. But that's easy enough to do. Spin this around. Move this piece into place. Okay. Now what we have to do is we have to move this back to where it's supposed to be, because now, so move that back to center. Then we can move it into. And now that's like it's supposed to be. Much better. Okay. So now that we have that taken care of, we'll grab a rectangle from here to here. And we will make it 3.5. We will go ahead and, I guess we could push it back this way. We are going to triple click it and make it a component. And the only thing that we need to do is just verify that it really is in the center of this. So we'll pick it up from the midpoint here, and we're going to go to the midpoint there. All right, so there is our finished 3D model of our farmhouse bench. How cool is that? So now what we can do, now that we have a real world version of this, we can get some dimensions. So for example, how long is this? 27 inches. And then let's come over here to our actual deal here. It says it's 26 inches. And I wonder, aha, we came in 2.5 inches. And we're only supposed to come in 2. So this drawing is actually wrong. This actually has to be pushed out. So let's ungroup this. So this is actually wrong. So we will just move this over 1/2 inch. And move this over 1/2 inch. And now you can see that is the correct width, and we're going to go ahead and make that 3.5 because I would use that as a 2x4. And there you go. So now we just have to change this dimension to be 27 inches. Everything else stays the same. All right. So there is, like I was saying, our completed 3D model ready to go. So I hope you enjoyed the process and just kind of getting a little insight on how we create our 3D models, and how you can learn a little bit more about SketchUp and how it all works for creating 3D models. It's really a neat program once you figure out how to use it. Thanks for watching.